So I've now got my hands on the early access for season 9.5. So we're going to go over all the hero changes, starting off with Devil Dinosaur. Now the first thing they changed was essentially his Frenzied Feast damage. So as you can see now, it should be dealing a lot more damage. And when it comes to killing squishies, you're able to kill them in essentially a one-shot combo if you do land your bleed with the first hit. So that is the way this works. I'll quickly show you this on a tank. We do have the new tank right here as well, the hood, but we'll quickly just show you how much damage this actually now does, because it's went from 5% up to 8% on the first couple of hits, and then up to 12% for the last little bit of damage. So as you can see there, it does deal a decent amount more damage than it did before, and it is percentage based damage as well, so that's just something you need to keep in mind. Next up, they did change his team up with Jeff. So essentially now it heals 20 more healing, and it also lasts 1 second longer. So we'll quickly show you how much more healing this actually does. So as you can see here, it is a little bit of a stronger healing effect, and it also passes through teammates as well, so that's something to keep in mind. And lasting a little bit longer definitely helps. I just don't think this team up overall is a very useful one for Devil Dinosaur, because you will be finding yourself in the front line. So I feel like this buff was just absolutely unnecessary. It would have made more sense just to give him his grounding effect back, in my personal opinion. Next up, we've got Doctor Strange, and they made a couple of changes here. The first one is to do with his overall damage output. So essentially the projectile hits has went from 16 to 18, and then the projectile charges have went from 10 to 12. Overall, just meaning more damage with Strange, right? At one point, he was at the 18 damage and 12 damage. So they've essentially kind of reverted this from really, really old patches. But the other thing they changed was his team up with the Hulk, so the Gamma team up. And what this allows you to do now is use the Maelstrom on a 6-second cooldown instead of an 8-second cooldown. So it means you can do it way more frequently, outputting more damage. But as you know, the Gamma team up allows you to hold on to his charge pretty much indefinitely, so you don't actually get that anti-heal effect, or it holds on to a little bit longer anyway. So as you can see there, it allows you to use it more frequently. When it comes to Magneto's changes, pretty straightforward. When you have Scarlet Witch, which is over there somewhere, by the way, and you do have the enhanced effect, essentially when you do his Hadouken at full charge, it adds a launch up effect. Now, I don't really see the launch up. It does knock back, but the launch up effect must be really minor, because I don't actually notice it at all, or maybe it's just not programmed into the game yet. I'm really not too sure, but I'll show you that one more time anyway. It doesn't seem to be a massive knock up. Now let's talk about Penny Parker. Super important changes to this hero, some major ones too. So essentially her web cluster now doesn't stun enemies, it actually applies a slowing effect. So as you can see here, it's slowing the enemy, and this cluster lasts 5 seconds. Now the actual slowing effect only lasts 1 second, so you get a 30% slow for 1 second, and then they go back to normal speed after that. But this cluster tracer essentially allows you to hit the enemy for a second time, and the second time then stuns them in place, right? So it means you cannot just stun with one hit, so you need to make sure you're landing them twice. Now they are relatively easy to land for the most part, so you can still stun in place. Now we will test if it can cancel ultimates still. I doubt it. I think you will still need the 2 back-to-back to actually cancel an ultimate, which is still pretty decent at cancelling ultimates relatively easily. But that is how they work now, essentially. And the immobilize effect only lasts 0.7 seconds. Now, on top of that, the web cluster, as you can see, has a 2 charge on it. Now, you can place multiple still, which is one thing I was a bit concerned about, is how many can you actually place next to your nest, obviously, because this is going to be how you bunker down in certain maps or certain places in the game. But you can still apply 4 of these to the ground before they disappear, so that's absolutely not changed at all. And then they also reduced the amount of bonus health that you get with your cyber webs from 200 to 150, making her overall HP now 800 HP with the overshields. The rogue, her regenerative shields now take up 275 of her HP, which means that if you're inactive, you can get almost half of your HP back, which makes her relatively strong if you are able to find a safe spot. Now, on top of that, they also reduced the amount of damage that you take when in defensive stance by 5, so you should be able to survive a little bit longer in defensive stance whilst taking damage, because now you can basically reduce the damage by 60%, which is kind of insane if you think about it. So a 60% damage reduction is kind of ridiculous. So overall, it's definitely a buff to Rogue. If you can combine that with her team ups and also the mag team up as well, I think it's definitely very solid. But I don't think this is going to be a stupidly significant change to this character, making her absolute meta, but definitely helps her overall. Now here's a bit of a controversial one, and that is Venom. So essentially, they've got a 10-second cooldown on his swing now, so it means you cannot swing out nearly as often as you would like, because it's now on another 2-second longer cooldown, as you can see here. Bit unfortunate for Venom players, I would say so, because this was just a weird nerf in my opinion. I feel like they could have changed other aspects of this hero to balance them out better, but regardless, that's what they did. And then the other thing is that they adjusted how much overshield percentage you get. So instead of it being 120% of your lost HP, you now only get 110% of your lost HP. So without doing too much maths, because that's going to take a long time, you can see that you will get a little bit less HP than before. It's not ridiculously significant, but when you combo this with the fact that his swing is on a longer cooldown as well, then it is a bit unfortunate that its overall survivability is tanked a bit, in my opinion. And I think that is an annoying change to Venom when they could have nerfed other aspects of this hero. Let's up next, and when it comes to Black Panther, what they adjusted was the Storm team up, which is the one that was used the absolute most. So the amount of damage in the area that enemies take is being reduced from 40 to 30 damage. So as you can see here, it's going to be 30 damage there. Obviously, this bot's taking a little bit of damage before that. But the cooldown on top of this is now 15 seconds instead of 12 seconds. So Black Panther couldn't be decent for no longer than half a season before they decided to nerf this guy. So unfortunately, this team up, although it is still pretty decent, is now no longer viable as frequently as before. And it doesn't do nearly as much damage as well. When it comes to Cyclops, they've made a couple of simple changes here. The first one is when you come to use your Ricochet Force and you're waiting for that cooldown to come back. So as you can see here, we'll get it to the 12-second cooldown. The more primary fires or secondary fires you land, you should be getting that cooldown back much, much faster now. They have improved this by 0.1 of a second, essentially. So every time you land a hit, you're going to be getting this back a little bit quicker. So that's how that works. Very, very solid change there. Now, they also changed the Gambit team up, which when you use the concussive beam, it gives you an attack frequency boost, meaning that it does more damage now overall because your attacks are going to be faster. So like I said, overall, just more damage output when you're using Cyclops now. Next up is the Elsa changes, which was only to the Devil Dinosaur team up, which allows you to now use the trap. However, the trap only lasts 1.2 seconds when you've trapped an enemy instead of 1.5, and it now has 50 HP instead of 100 HP, so it can be destroyed a lot faster. So as you can see at the side here, it says 50 HP, and that is overall how these traps are now working. The next change is with Hela and the Namor team up. So essentially, once you kill an enemy, these squids are going to be doing 5 less damage overall. So that's essentially how this change has affected Hela, which is nothing too substantial because it's still a very strong team up regardless, because you can get multiple squids. So still very strong nonetheless. So when it comes to Moon Knight, they made a couple of changes. The first one is to his damage output. So essentially, they've reverted some changes when it comes to his bounce damage. So it doesn't decay nearly as much when you're bouncing between enemies. Now, this can be used with his Unk, or it can be used just by hitting enemies directly. But essentially, he does more damage on the second bounce now, which is very, very handy for a hero like this. I think this is going to make him slightly more viable. They also adjusted his Cloak and Dagger team up, which now has a dash duration of 0.05 seconds longer, but the distance is also a little bit farther as well. So it's going to be 15 meters instead of 12. I don't think this is massive, but overall, definitely a decent change. So what they also added to this, and as you can see, Dagger is up there to simulate the enhanced team up, is that you now get 3 seconds of extra healing after your phase is done. So as you can see, the phase is done, and then you get 3 seconds of more healing, and you can almost recoup the majority of your health back, which is definitely very solid. So overall, a pretty decent escape mechanic, but that is all it's used for. Next up, we have Phoenix, and what they adjusted with this hero is her spark damage and the area damage as well. So the spark damage is now 5 more, and the area damage is now 3 more. So essentially what this means is your first hit will always be the same, and once you've got all the sparks and you're going to detonate, this does 5 more damage now. And then anyone that gets hit by that blast, essentially, so let's show you that again, that is going to do 3 more damage around that area. So overall, a decent change for Phoenix. She's able to 2-shot to the head essentially still, which is definitely very solid. Good change for her there. Now, when it comes to her team up change, they did adjust this to deal 10 more damage essentially. So if you hit an enemy directly with the punch, it does do 55 damage now, which is definitely very solid in my opinion. I think it makes it a bit better than it was before, and probably just in line with the Hela team up. I think our team ups are very, very similar, mind you. Next up, we have the Wolverine buff, which is pretty solid. Essentially allows him to build up his charge faster. It also decays slower overall when it comes to not dealing damage. So you can keep a hold of this 100% charge for slightly longer as well. So overall, just meaning that he's going to be able to shred tanks so much better because he's able to hold on to it a little bit longer with his damage. And also, he's going to build it up pretty much a lot quicker. By the way, it is very, very noticeable in my opinion, and I don't play too much Wolverine, and I think this builds up ridiculously fast. Next up, we have Scarlet Witch. Now, this change was a bit of a weird one in my opinion, but essentially for her base team up, it's now got 8 seconds on these missiles, which is pretty solid. It means it lasts a little bit longer than it usually does, outputting more damage. But it's also now on an 8-second cooldown, meaning that you get it back more frequently. Now, what they've actually changed here when it comes to having Doctor Strange on your team, so I'm going to go over here and toggle him on so we can show you exactly what you could do with this team up. So let's test this out. So Doctor Strange is now active. Let's show you what this does now. So essentially when you activate the team up button, you can use L2 to fire this button essentially, which was the only option before. So it means you had to use this as your secondary fire. So you can pretty much use this indefinitely now. It's not got any sort of cooldown or anything like that. You can just use it for as long as you want, whenever you want. As you can see, it does a lot of damage. Or you can toggle it back to using your secondary fire, and you can use this as you normally would, right? So that is the option that you have. So you either toggle it to use your secondary fire, or you could use this, meaning that you can output more damage just more often, which I think is definitely a good quality of life change. It was more of a quality of life change than it was a buff to the team up, in my opinion. Next up, we have Gambit, and the change to Gambit was a very simple one. When it comes to his mag team up, essentially when he fires at the bubble, it no longer knocks back at 0.5 seconds. It knocks back only at 1 second now. So you're going to get a few less knockbacks in general. I think it's still a decent team up nonetheless. I think it's still very strong. I just think that it is a minor nerf to this team up overall, making it less of a really strong anti-dive tool. I do still think it's pretty decent though, as you can see on that Galactabot. It does knock back. Next up, we've got the Jubilee changes, which is very straightforward. What they did was they increased the healing amount by 1 for teammates, and they also increased the damage amount by 1 for enemies, and that is exactly what they've did when you're using the bubbles. So essentially she's going to heal a little bit better, and she's going to deal a little bit more damage just for her base attack. When it comes to Loki, another very simple change here, that they increased his projectile speed, so you should be hitting enemies just a little bit quicker now. It is actually noticeable in my opinion. I think previously it fired quite slow, but now you can notice it does fire relatively fast, meaning that you're going to output heals a little bit quicker and damage a little bit faster, especially when you have your clones down as well. You're going to notice this significantly when it hits the enemies or hits your target on point. The last change before we get on into team up changes is White Fox's ultimate, which essentially now gives you the blessings of the 9 effect, so that unstoppable effect for the first 3 seconds in that 10-meter radius, right? So essentially your teammates are fully unstoppable for 3 seconds, and they don't take any damage, or they don't take any kind of CC effects, which I think is definitely pretty strong overall when you're trying to use this ultimate. But I do think White Fox needed buffs to her team ups as well, which they never did. The last thing I want to show you is the team up changes when it comes to having the hood on the 2 heroes that benefit from having him available. The first one is Jubilee. So in terms of the team up, what's supposed to happen here is when you hit the bubble on the enemy, and you ignite this, essentially this spark is meant to last on them forever, I believe, but it turns out it doesn't work like that. I don't really know if I'm missing something or if I don't understand fully what the Hood team up's meant to do. He is over there, by the way, just to confirm. So my thoughts were that this spark, when you do pop it, it stays applied right to these enemies so that you can continuously use this hit scan attack that allows you to deal insane damage, right? Now, if I'm missing something, please leave it down in the comments below, because that sounds like what the enhanced effect is supposed to do. Maybe it's not active in the game just yet. And lastly, we've got Magic's team up with the Hood. So essentially the way this works is that when you activate it within a radius, so for example, if you activate this, every time you use your portal, it spawns out a demon regardless of what you do. So then you can use your whirl and the demon at the exact same time. So I'll quickly show you that one more time before we show you the enhanced version if you don't play Magic much. So we'll quickly just show you that one more time. So we'll pop the team up. Every time you portal, you get a demon, but you can also do the whirl at the same time, as you can see here, right? So now when the Hood's in the game, essentially your demons are just buffed versions, dealing more damage and having more HP. And as you can see, they are able to kill enemies almost by themselves, how much damage they do. So I do just want to show you that quickly one more time, just so you get a good example of what's going on. I'm not the best Magic player, by the way. I've only played Magic randomly here and there, but as you can see, definitely dealing more damage and overall have more HP than normal. So there we have it. Those are all the changes when it comes to season 9.5 and the update. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and thank you very much for watching.